All right, let's talk about something that's becoming a huge deal: zoonotic diseases. You know, those infections that can actually jump from animals straight to humans. We're talking about things like rabies, even Rift Valley fever. And the scary part? These spillovers are happening more and more often. So today we're going to dig into exactly why.
So that brings us to the big question we're tackling today. Why are we seeing this massive surge in zoonotic diseases right now, especially across Africa? What is going on? Let's get into it.
Okay, so the story really starts with what experts call the human-animal interface. It's basically a fancy way of saying just how incredibly close people, their farm animals, and even local wildlife live side by side every single day. And to really get a sense of the scale here, get this: more than 60% of all the people on Earth who depend on livestock to survive, they live in Africa. That's a huge number, and it creates this unique environment where the risk is just so much higher.
And we're not talking about something abstract here. This is just daily life. You've got animals kept right inside the family compound, often where kids are playing. And think about common practices like drinking milk that hasn't been pasteurized or slaughtering animals at home. Each one of these things is like opening a door for pathogens, things like E. coli or even rabies, to make that jump from an animal to a person.
In this quote right here, it just nails it. Zoonotic spillover is not accidental, it is structural. What that means is these outbreaks aren't just random bad luck. No, they're a predictable outcome of the very systems we've built: how we live, how we farm, and how we interact with the world around us. So you've got this underlying structural risk, right? But now it's being cranked up to 11, by which you could only call a perfect storm of different factors all hitting at once. And that's turning what was a long-term threat into a full-blown immediate crisis. Okay, first step in this perfect storm: climate change. It's a huge accelerator. And here's the key thing to understand. Climate change isn't necessarily inventing new diseases. Instead, think of it like an engine, just pushing existing diseases into new areas and giving them a much bigger territory to thrive in. So how does that actually work? Well, a few ways. For one, rising temperatures mean that insects that carry diseases, I'm talking mosquitoes, ticks, can now live in places they never could before. Then you get extreme weather. Huge floods can contaminate water sources with animal waste, which is full of pathogens. And on the flip side, a severe drought forces people and their animals to move, looking for water. When they do, they mix with new populations. And guess what travels with them? Disease. All right, next let's look at our livestock systems. They're obviously super important for people's livelihoods, but in a lot of places they've accidentally created what one expert perfectly described as a disease highway. And on this highway, pathogens can travel fast and, completely unseen. You have animals moving across borders with hardly any health checks. You've got crowded informal markets that are basically hotbeds for germs. And then there's poor hygiene during slaughter that just spreads contamination everywhere. These are all massive gaps in what we call biosecurity. And there's another huge factor we need to talk about: urbanization. Cities across Africa are growing faster than anywhere else on Earth. And that rapid growth is creating new and, frankly, pretty unexpected hotspots for these animal-to-human diseases. So as cities get bigger and more expensive, what do people do? A lot of families start backyard farming, raising a few chickens or goats just to help put food on the table. It makes perfect sense. But the problem is, when you bring animals into really dense, crowded city neighborhoods, especially without much regulation, you're just creating the perfect conditions for diseases like avian flu or salmonella to take hold and spread like wildfire. And as if all that wasn't enough, there's a kind of silent accelerator making everything even more dangerous, and that is antimicrobial resistance, or AMR for short. And how this happens is, it's actually dangerously simple. Step 1, antibiotics get overused in livestock, a lot of times without any real oversight. This lets the drug-resistant bacteria, the superbugs, thrive. Step 2, those superbugs then spread to us, to people, through the food we eat, the water we drink, or just by direct contact. And the final, terrifying result? A common infection that we used to be able to treat easily is suddenly untreatable with our go-to medicines. So, with all of these threats piling up, you'd think our number one priority would be spotting them early, right? But the reality is, in so many places, the health systems are essentially flying blind. You can't stop what you can't see. So why are these outbreaks being missed? Well, a few big reasons. Many rural areas just don't have the labs to diagnose these things. The people tracking animal health and the people tracking human health, they're often not talking to each other. Their data is totally separate.
And on the ground, communities might not even recognize the first symptoms. The end result is always the same. By the time anyone realizes there's a problem, the disease is already way ahead of them. Okay, so after all of that, it sounds pretty grim, right? But there is a solution, and it's a really powerful idea that experts are all pointing to. It's a concept called One Health, and the core idea is actually super simple, but it's also revolutionary. It's that you can't have healthy people if you don't have healthy animals and a healthy environment. They're all completely connected. Think of it like a three-legged stool. If one leg breaks, the whole thing comes crashing down. So what does One Health actually look like when you put it into practice? Well, it means doctors, vets, and environmental scientists are all on the same team working together. It means building smart surveillance systems that can spot a threat in an animal population before it has a chance to jump to people. It means getting out into communities and teaching people about hygiene and safety. And it means making sure our food is safer, all the way from the farm to our plate. And this really sums it all up. Zoonotic diseases cannot be controlled by one sector alone. The message couldn't be clearer. If everyone stays in their own little silo, we're going to fail. The only way to win this is with a unified, coordinated defense. So let's wrap this up by talking about why this matters to every single one of us, no matter where you live. Because when you have these gaps in surveillance, a small, local outbreak in animals doesn't stay local for long. It can explode into a national crisis before you even know what's happening. And we all know how interconnected our world is today. A national crisis can hop on a plane and cross borders in a matter of hours, becoming a global emergency. It's the ultimate proof of that saying, a threat anywhere is truly a threat everywhere. So the threat is crystal clear. We even have the blueprint for the solution, this One Health approach. But it's not going to happen on its own. It needs real investment, serious coordination, and the political will to make it a priority. Which leaves us with the final critical question. Are we actually prepared for the next spillover?